churches are kind of a central theme of your album, right?
Yeah, they're everywhere here in Chicago.
And so, yeah, my understanding is, well, I just was watching the video for Alameda Apartments, which looks like it was shot in the church. Is that the church in question, as far as the one that you were writing about and living in?
I'm moving to Alameda Apartments. She took all my things and left our place in flames today. As hard as I tried to keep the old place, in the end she wouldn't let me stay.
Yes, that's St. Peter's UCC, which is on a different end of town, but that's where I lived for about 20 months.
Do you want to reveal why that was the case, or how you ended up in that spot?
Sure. Yeah, I was the accompanist there every Sunday for about 3 years.
Right.
And then I was in a position where I needed lodging in short order.
Right.
And the people of St. Peter's were there for me. And fortunately, the parsonage was vacant, and I moved in.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was very cool.
And so is that, did it inspire quite a bit of the music that we're going to hear on the album?
Yeah, unquestionably. I had access to all of the spaces of the church 24/7.
Right.
And so I could, I spent a long time learning how to play the pipe organ. I spent hours and hours practicing and learning how to read.
Right.
Again,
Is there a trick to playing the pipe organ as opposed to playing any other organ or keyboard?
Oh yeah, it's a completely different animal, I'd say. I played Hammond organ, which if you're playing in a trio, requires the use of both your feet. However, only one foot is playing the pedals. And in classical pipe organ, both feet are engaged playing the pedals, and also you have all of the stops, if you will.
Right.
That's where the phrase "pulling out all the stops."
Ah, really? I didn't know that. That's cool. Yeah, we have a giant pipe organ in the Auckland Town Hall. It's massive. It fills up the whole wall. It's a very impressive thing.
I can't wait to see it.
You'll have to come down and play it sometime.
I would love to.
Yeah, I think it's on a few music videos that have been shot there, so you can see it if you look hard enough. But yeah, that'd be cool. So the album is due out on Friday. How are you feeling about releasing it in this day and time, whatever?
I feel so excited that it's going to be out in the world. And, you know, we just came back from a 2-week tour where we were seeing everybody coming back to shows. We just came from Outside Lands in San Francisco was our last play, and there were 100,000 people there really enjoying life and enjoying live music. It was fantastic.
Well, we're locked down here in Auckland at the moment. We're trying to get out of it. We've been locked down for like 2 months. So it's driving us crazy here, especially hearing about that. But we're getting through it. It's all good. But I noticed, I was looking at some of your set lists. You guys do an amazing array of covers. I think at one show you did a cover by Plastic Ono Band, Funkadelic, and Andrew Gold. I mean, how do you explain yourself? Where does that come from?
Well, you know, I think I have such an eclectic appreciation of music, and so does the rest of the band. And so, you know, there's a common thread of things that we like. Usually we're in love with the production of the 1970s and the sort of the rock sounds, particular from that era, and the way that funk, soul, gospel, and rock all blended together.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think John Lennon did that very well, and also obviously George Clinton did that very well. So.
Yep. Yes, indeed. Have you ever met Mr. Clinton?
I actually have.
Yeah.
Long ago, my band, The Herd, opened for Parliament Funkadelic, and he had just recently changed his look. He was very clean cut in a pinstripe suit, and I can't tell you what he said on the air, but it was very memorable.
Yeah. I'm sure it was. That's very good. That's cool. Well, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the album is in plain sight. So you had a producer, or you produced it with a guy named Sergio Rios. Is that how you pronounce his name? Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Tell me about him and tell me how you guys work together.
Sergio produced the Herd record, my old band,
right?
And then he also recorded in Changes, which was my first record,
right?
And during that recording session, we became very close friends, and he's really like a brother in terms of just how we get along, but also how our musical tastes and affinities line up. And so there's really great communication on that level. And I enjoy spending time with him, which is important because, you know, a day in the studio with Sergio is like minimum 12 hours.
Oh my God.
I think we were in the studio for like 26 hours straight before he left for LA. When we were finishing the overdubs, and it was just like such a surreal time.
Right. So it was you and your bandmates all together working together, or what was it like?
We did 12 days of proper. No, I think we did 11 or 12 days of proper like band tracking.
Right.
And then there was a dub session which would last another 10 days, just maybe 12 days with Sergio and I.
Very good. Now I noticed that you have a guest on the record. Derek Trucks plays on Can't Stop the Rain. How'd you get him roped in to help out?
The hardest thing to do is hard for me to say. If I only knew, I would take your pain away. I can't stand the truth. You knew me all along. I can't hide from you, girl, 'cause you're in every song.
Well, we had a friend, Jesse Lauder, reach out to him, and I was really grateful for that. I had no idea that Jesse even worked with Derek, because he's such a humble guy. I was like, oh, it's my buddy Jesse.
Right.
It's really my fault for not knowing he worked with Derek and Susan. But he was like, oh, Derek would sound great on this. So he called him up and sent him the track, and he loved it. So he graced us with his performance.
Yeah. And was there much conversation between you and him about what he was going to play, or you just like, here, do your thing?
Well, he was good enough to call with me the day he went in the studio, and such a professional and humble guy. We talked a little bit about how I first saw him when I was 17, here in Chicago.
Yeah.
And he just really made an impact on me with his humility. And he asked me what I wanted, and I was like, well, we're going for like 1970 to 1973,
right.
Dwayne, Mick Taylor, that kind of thing. And he's like, all right. And then like we got 4 takes back that night, and the first of those 4 takes is what you hear on the record. It's like,
nice.
He just knocked it out of the park. He's the greatest at what he does, for sure.
It's interesting you mentioned 1973 in that era. I mean, I graduated from high school in 1973. I was buying records like Allman Brothers and Stones and Bowie and all that stuff. What is it that appeals to you about that sound in that era? Because I know what appeals to me, but I was a teenager then.
That's what I listened to growing up as well in my house. And I connected more of the music of that era than I did with what was going on in the 90s, which is when I was growing up.
Right.
In the early 2000s. I think pop music of the time when I was growing up was more, I wasn't interested in it as much. I don't want to say it's better or worse, but
sure.
I do love the production of the early 70s. And I feel like there was a lot of really popular music that was just singularly interesting and heavy and amazing.
It was like that, yeah, definitely. Now you have
We're
a tune
lucky.
called,
We're lucky to get to mine those influences now, standing
Sure.
here, having everything that came before us. Because there's so much great music from the 2000s and the 90s, and it just wasn't stuff that I was really turned on to when I was a kid.
right. Were you growing up in Chicago at that time?
Yes, I was.
So Chicago in the 90s, I mean, Smashing Pumpkins, right?
I did. Yeah, I mean, I listened to it. I listened to it on the radio. Obviously, like Smashing Pumpkins got a lot of play on XRT, and even 97.9 The Loop, which is more like the classic rock station.
Yep.
And I heard all that stuff through osmosis. And I mean, like, I had a Green Day phase. I had a Blink 182 phase. I had like Astro Lounge by Smash Mouth on CD, which I'm not like super proud to say, but like, for the most part, like, you know, the first CDs I bought were The Doors, Self-Titled, and Tommy by The Who.
There you go.
And like I sort of expanded from there. That music connected with me way more.
Right. Now there's a tune called Prometheus on the record, which obviously Prometheus is the Greek god. But my understanding is it was kind of inspired by being stuck in quarantine in Chicago. Perhaps you can elaborate or confirm.
When I'm down in the dirt is the day that I'll take your advice. Run ahead of the devil and try not to wallow in vice. It's not in my nature to try to do better. When the birds have enough is when I'll ask you to make a start.
Yeah, my drummer and I were living together, and we used to joke that there was a movie called Lighthouse that came out with Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe, and they're lighthouse keepers, and some really crazy stuff happens. And of course, the movie is an allegory for the Prometheus myth. We used to always joke that we were like those lighthouse keepers, and then so that I did some reading about the Prometheus myth after I watched the movie, and so that was at like the forefront of my consciousness when I was like beating my head against the wall trying to come up with because I wrote a completely different set of lyrics to the instrumental for Prometheus, and then being unsatisfied with those, just continued to search, and then one day like that hook for the chorus came to me, and I was like really stoked about it because I usually don't come up with very good ideas, and I was just like,
"Oh, now don't beat yourself
here's a good
up."
one. So,
and is there a section in the song that you refer to as the Pope?
Oh yeah, that's been kicking around for a long time. There's like this build that happens. It's an instrumental kind of build right before it goes back to the intro, and I have a Roland Juno 6, and when I first got that synthesizer years ago, I just started messing around with that chord progression, and I've been waiting for a chance to use it. So I just imagine the Pope sort of storming about in slow motion with his red Prada shoes, in the Vatican, just like robes flowing.
Right, of course. Have you ever seen the series? What is it called? The Young Pope?
I don't know.
It's very strange. Anyway, and it's
the Young Pope.
Yeah.
No, I haven't yet.
Oh, you should check it out.
No, should I? All right.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. It came out a couple of years ago. There's a tune. It's followed by Sentimental Garbage, which is kind of a lengthy, almost prog rocky type thing, and very epic sounding. What's going on there? When you put a track like that together, are you playing in the studio together? Is it like kind of a live performance, or is it pieced together? Well,
that's I think that's the magic of this record, is we tracked everything together as a 4-piece, and then there were like auxiliary synthesizers layered on top of it with my vocals, of course. But the Sentimental Garbage track you hear on the record had a false ending. It was actually like it was a missed cue to cut, And then I kept playing that riff, and then we came back into the tune, and it was like clear to us that was the take.
Gotcha.
So I'm really proud of that one too.
I've heard of false starts, but that sounds like a false ending. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Now, how do you recreate that live?
Yeah, we absolutely do. Yeah, we stretched that one out. I think we played a 10-minute version of that at Outside Lands.
Yeah, cool. And how are folks reacting to the new material?
Man, it's been really cool to see that when the record's not even out, people are really digging the new stuff just as much as the material from Changes. And that was a big fear of mine because it's quite a departure sonically from my first record. And I was wondering if anybody would know or would appreciate the new stuff. And it's clear that it's been connecting audiences, and
That's
a lot of it's been getting played on the radio, which is
nice.
really exciting too.
Is there still radio? I mean, everything's
apparently there is. I mean, it's been doing quite well streaming. It's been doing quite well on the terrestrial radio stations as well, and we have a lot of support. So I'm so grateful for all of that.
Cool. Now, I should mention that you got Dave Fridman to mix the album. Is that right?
Yes. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, my pleasure. Actually, he's been coming up in conversation quite a bit. We're working with all different kinds of music. So obviously there's something that draws people to him, no matter whether they're making kind of British pop or what you're doing. So how come you chose to work with him?
Well, I was thrilled that there was even the option to work with David Fridman because going back to our earlier discussion, the period of time represented the least in my vinyl catalog is like the year 2000 to present.
Right.
And I realized that most of those records I had were produced by David Fridman. I have the first two Tame Impala records.
Right.
I have Era Extraña by Neon Indian. I have all of the Flaming Lips records.
I was going to say, you got to have some Flaming Lips in there.
Our friend Scott Booker, who sent those to us, and just like, so I was a huge fan of his production. And when his name got thrown out there by the label as someone we could potentially work with as a mixing engineer, I was just, thrilled to hear that. And when he agreed to take on the project, it was just very exciting. And working with him was amazing. He's such a professional and very kind and has a great sense of humor. And it went extremely smoothly. And I was just in awe of what he was able to do with our recordings, which sounded very good already. And he was able to just give them such depth and add all the bells and whistles. So
when you have somebody who's kind of outside of your sphere of influence coming in to do something as serious as mixing the record, how much communication do you just say, okay, well, you're Dave Fridman, so do your thing, or you're like, this is really important to me, I need to talk to you about this first? Well,
that's a great question. Yeah. So what our workflow proceeded like this: we had 12 tracks, and then he reserved 12 days in his studio to mix.
Right.
And so a track per day, and he would in the morning tell us what song he was going to work on, and then by 4 or 5 p.m. He would have a working mix. We would submit our notes, and then he would do some modifications to that first mix by 6 or 7 p.m. And so then we would have that second revision to review overnight, and then submit our final comments in the morning. And then he would do one last round of mixing.
Yep.
And we would usually have our final mix by 11 a.m. And then he would repeat the process. And so we mixed the entire record in about 12 days.
Cool. And so he's located in Fredonia, outside of Buffalo, right? And
correct.
So I assume you did it remotely. You didn't go there, travel there?
Yes. I would have loved to go out there. And we were talking about it because initially I was really enamored with the idea of mixing the record off of the original master tapes.
Sure.
Because we did everything analog.
Right.
But because of COVID and there was no vaccine available at the time.
Right.
So David was just using precautions, and that wasn't really an option for us. But I think it turned out great.
Cool. So what are you going to do on the 5th when the record comes out? What are your plans?
Oh man, we are gonna do a little release party at our the friendliest blues club in Chicago, Rose's Lounge.
Okay.
Which is where I used to hold down a weekly residency. It's also the first place I ever went to a club to see live music when I was 12.
Who'd you see? Do you remember?
Pine Top Perkins.
Well, you can't beat that. It's all downhill from there, man.
Yeah, man. He was in his 80s at the time, and I got to meet him a few times after that. But then I actually started holding down a gig there when I was in my 20s. So it's quite a strange full circle.
Very nice. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
And have you ever been to New Zealand?
I have never been, but it is on my bucket list to be sure. I would love to come to Oceania.
Yep. Come on down, play our giant pipe organ, and we'll be all set.
Please, I'd love to start browsing through your 6,000 records back there.
There's more than 6. You've insulted me now.
Maybe 10.
There's well over 10. And then the scary thing is there's like 15,000 7-inches in the other room that aren't.
Oh my gosh.
So you're more than welcome to hang.
Yeah, I'll have to reserve a few months.
Absolutely. Excellent. Well, thank you for spending this time talking to me, and good luck with the release day on Friday, because it sounds like it's going to be fun. It's almost Friday here. It's Thursday already, so we haven't got long to wait.
Thanks, Marty. I'm sending all my love to the Kiwis down there, and we love you. So.
We need all the help we can get. Thanks a lot.
All right, man.
Bye-bye.
Take care.